Hey guys, Mo here, and for Halloween, I had to create two props for a Houdini-themed Halloween event. The first prop was inspired by the controversy surrounding Sam and Colby's Conjuring house video. This prop replicates the knocking aspect, so whenever I or someone asks a yes or no question, a knock will occur in relation. 2 knocks for yes, 1 knock for no, as if a ghost is actually communicating with us. Now, the second prop was designed to be on the center stage. Its main purpose? To vibrate a photo of Houdini, as if the spirit of Houdini is nearby, shaking a photo of himself. Woohoo! Spooky! Continue watching if you're interested in how I created these props, how the event went, and my thoughts and feelings about the props at the end of everything. Now let's start with the first prop. I was inspired by the controversy surrounding the Sam and Colby Conjuring house video. Apparently this couple, once they hold hands, they can communicate with the dead. They ask questions, ask to spell out names, and apparently the ghost will communicate back with a knock. Well, as a normal mortal, I can't simply ask the spirits to create the knocking sound because I have no mystical powers. So the next best thing is for me to use my engineering powers and design a contraption that will recreate the knocking, which in this case used solenoids. I have a bunch of these solenoids left over from a previous project. I couldn't really complete said project because it required me to do something very not law-abiding. Well, since these solenoids don't retract, I had to essentially use 2 of them. Solenoid 1, once energized, will push solenoid 2 into the wall, creating the knocking sound. And then solenoid 2, once energized, will push solenoid 1 back into initial resting position. This loop happens once for no and twice for yes. I ended up finding this plumbing T-adapter and some plumbing tape from Bunnings, which was perfect since now not only the T-adapter will hold the solenoids in place, but the third point of the T-adapter can be used for mounting purposes, a way to mount the solenoids to a housing. Here you could see how both solenoids line up and work together in order to ensure a knocking sound. Next up, I fired up FreeCAD, created a case that would hold the T-adapter and the solenoids in place, and designed it in a way that it would use suction cup feet to hold the case in place and mountable to a multitude of places such as wooden floors or walls. I'll be using a Wemos D1 Mini since it has Wi-Fi and it's cheap as hell. It's about $5, and that's why I created the mounting for it. With a bolt hole because I'm going to 3D print a bolt that would fit in the T-adapter and through the housing of the case. A 3D print later, and it looked beautiful. It was time to combine the items. Look at it. It's a mess. I'll clean up the wiring later, but for now, I just need it to basically function. Which it did. I programmed the Wemos, it worked, but the problem was I used tip 120 MOSFETs and maybe I got the wiring wrong or the MOSFETs were defective, but shortly after I recorded this video, they started to smoke. So I replaced each MOSFET with the MOSFET power switch modules from Core Electronics. The prop now functions fantastically, and here's the wiring diagram. Pause it if you want. But the full size of this wiring diagram is available on my GitHub. Down below in my video description, there's a link. Here we have is the access point that the Wemos creates. I named the AP after the inspiration for the prop. And now in the code, solenoid 1 is at D1, which will push solenoid 2 against a solid object, which will cause the knocking sound, as mentioned before. Then solenoid 2 will be energized and push solenoid 1 into the initial resting state. This one loop equates to no, 2 loops equals to yes. Here is a portion that connects my code to the web server. Pressing yes, this portion of the code will execute. I factored in delays and random amount of time between 1 to 7 seconds to ensure the knocks are not consistent. I'm trying to replicate how a ghost would communicate because from what I've seen from ghost shows, knocking isn't consistent. This portion will create 2 knocks. This portion is just the no portion. Same deal as the yes portion, but it's only 1 loop, 1 knock. Now on the night of the event, I suction cupped the prop under the table where it will knock the table leg. Now here's a bit of a demo of the product working through the event show.
And asking me he's here. Harry, are you here? Please give us a sign. I told you he was around you. Harry, is that you? Knocking.
The prop worked out great. it worked as intended. Things I will change is I would make 3 of them total. So it sounds like the knocks are coming from around the room and not just one location. Create mountings for the MOSFET power switch modules to just clip onto the housing. And finally organize and clean up the excess wiring so it doesn't look sus. Oh, I almost forgot. I should have put a bit more heat shrink tubing between the parts of the solenoid that hit each other. Second prop time. Now the second prop was easy. My objective was to just vibrate a picture of Harry Houdini, and the second thing I thought of was the vibrated motors from my old PlayStation 2 controller. This should be strong enough to vibrate a picture with the help of 2N222 transistors. I had to keep the item small and portable, so it needed to be battery powered, as it would be sitting on a center table in front of an audience. Now for the battery aspect, I had taken apart a lot of disposable vape in order to get my hands on some lithium ion batteries that were supplied by my mate Douglas. Now, this partnered up with the TP4056 lithium battery charger, which you can find on eBay, will power both the Wemos D1 Mini and the vibrating motors for this project. I ended up creating the housing after I got the general idea and I collected the parts. The first model is basically a tray that holds all the components, such as the Wemos D1 Mini, the TP4056, 2 lithium ion batteries, and the vibrating motors. The second component is the lid, and that will hold a picture of Harry Houdini merged with the vibrating tray. 2 prints later and I was done. This worked out great, but I'm not gonna lie, it was a tight fit. Certain components were interfering with each other, such as the weight at the end of the motor and with the circuit board. Here's the wire diagram. Again, you can find it on my GitHub. Kisses! I ran a modified blink example to test both motors and the prop works great. I then recycled my old code again from one of my props last year. Check out the bell ring and ghost trick video. I had to modify it, update it to suit 2 motors. I'll do a brief explanation. The motors are connected to the transistors, which are connected to the D1 and D6 points on the Wemos D1 Mini. A motor per pin. For this project, both motors will run at the same time when on is pressed. The prop works accordingly, but it's not as strong as I expected. I think maybe I need to increase the amount of motors used or significantly increase the existing voltages to improve the performance of the prop. However, I'm running out of time, so let's figure it out. I charged it completely on Halloween night. It finished up 10 minutes just before I had to use it on the event. The battery life is amazing. The prop lasted throughout the night. Now here's the portion where the prop was used during the event, a demonstration if you will.
Are you still here before you go? Just give us a sign. Are you doing the rumba? What's happening here? Thank you. Thank you for one last.
Let's just say it achieved the overall objective. However, it wasn't just powerful enough or strong enough to vibrate a frame. So I had to improvise on the night. I essentially got a framed photo of Houdini and stripped it down to where it was just a bit of cardboard and the photo. And I placed the prop on top of a bit of cardboard so it would vibrate a lot more than it would have been vibrating on a tablecloth on top of a table. Now I'm going to be completely honest with you. This prop needs work. Either increase the voltages to the motors to around about 12 volts or add in additional motors with full weights attached to them. Obviously this would increase the size of the prop, but to improve performance and to increase entertainment value, damn right it's the right choice. Other than that, maybe the one thing I would change is that both props will be connected to one single host, which would make it easier for me to actually control each one. Because on the night, I actually connected a phone each to each prop, so let's say I needed 2 phones to connect to 2 different props. The reason why I had them all creating their own access points is for me, keeping them separated is actually neater, but on the night it wasn't efficient. Now in conclusion, the props were great. The first one, the Knock Knock Contraption, was fantastic. However, if on a scale from initial conception to final product, I would rate it around the second prototyping stage. We're so close to the final product, we just needed to do some final tweaks like with the code and maybe slightly modify the physical prop by reducing unnecessary noise such as vibration and rattling. For example, instead of making the housing out of PLA, why not TPU? Or even adding in additional features to not only hold the T adapter in the housing, but to act like its enclosure, its keeper, so additional supports for the T adapter. Now, the second prop, Harry Houdini's Shaking Frame prop. It was alright. It worked, but it needed more power. It needed to shake its booty like it's nobody's business. And that alone is probably what really held it back from being a showstopper. Maybe also add in a bit of coding adjustments to add in a bit of more randomness, maybe such as a way to add in some sort of rhythm to the vibration, especially since I used transistors. Using the scaling from before, I believe this stage will be an earlier stage of development, a first prop. We got the general idea, but there's a lot more work to do to improve it. The audience were more engaged when the first prop was used, the Knock Knock Contraption, than the Houdini Shaking Frame prop. The event was successful, people enjoyed it, people were curious where the knocking was coming from. That was a huge positive for me. However, the second prop barely gained any notice or impressions. The event went swimmingly, with the audience clapping at the end, but that was more due to Deep's way of performing and hosting the event than the props themselves. Well, thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Check out my other videos. Check out my Patreon, and if you like, buy me a coffee so I keep funding my projects. Comment down below which one was your favorite prop out of the two. The Knock Knock Contraption was mine. See ya.
The spirit world, as you know, in some cultures, they're hungry.